Right now, in this exact moment, someone else is renting space in your head. Not literally, but close enough that it might as well be true. Every time you replay an argument you already lost. Every time you scroll past a stranger's highlight reel and feel smaller. Every time a comment, a rejection, a memory from 10 years ago hijacks your entire evening, you are not thinking. You are being thought for. Here's the uncomfortable truth almost nobody wants to admit: most people will go their entire lives without ever once deciding, on purpose, what they allow into their own mind. They will spend 40, 50, 60 years reacting to bosses, to headlines, to fear, to the opinions of people who will not remember their names in 5 years, and they will call this living. Napoleon Hill spent his life studying the most successful men and women of his era, and he found something that terrified him. It wasn't that these people had more talent. It wasn't that they had more luck. It was that they had sovereignty. They had built an invisible wall around their own thinking, and almost no one else in the world had bothered to. This is the secret buried inside a book most people have never heard of: How to Own Your Own Mind. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the mind you think you control is, right now, being run by everyone except you, and precisely what to do about it, starting today. Napoleon Hill made one promise across everything he ever wrote, and it's the same promise sitting underneath this book: you become what you habitually think about, whether you chose those thoughts or not. That single idea changed the trajectory of industrialists, generals, athletes, and quiet, unremarkable people who became extraordinary simply because they stopped letting their minds run on autopilot. This book became influential not because it offered comfort, but because it offered responsibility. Hill wasn't interested in telling people the world was unfair, he knew it was. He was interested in something far more dangerous: proving that the world's unfairness stopped mattering the moment a person learned to govern their own thoughts. By the time you finish this video, something in you will have shifted. You will no longer see your mind as something that simply happens to you, a weather system of moods and worries and random intrusive thoughts. You will start to see it as what it actually is: a property you own, a kingdom you're responsible for, and, until now, one you've probably left completely unguarded. This is the journey of a person going from mental tenant to mental owner. Let's begin. Lesson 1. The mind with no lock on the door. Picture your mind as a house. Now picture that house with no lock, no fence, no walls, just an open frame sitting in the middle of a busy street. Anyone can walk in, anyone can rearrange the furniture, leave their mess, walk back out, and you'll spend the rest of the day cleaning up after a stranger who doesn't even remember visiting. That is the average human mind. Not because people are weak, because nobody ever taught them the door existed in the first place. Here's what almost nobody realizes: you were never trained to defend your own thinking. School taught you to memorize facts. Culture taught you to consume opinions. Family taught you to inherit fears. Nowhere along the way did anyone sit you down and say, by the way, you are going to spend every waking hour of your life inside your own head, you should probably learn how to run it. So instead, most people absorb whatever enters. A cruel comment lodges itself and rents space for a decade. A frightening headline becomes the emotional backdrop of an entire week. A single failure at 22 becomes a life sentence at 45. Hill's insight is deceptively simple, and that's exactly why people underestimate it: the mind cannot hold two competing thoughts at the same time. Fear and determination cannot occupy the same second. Which means the moment you deliberately choose one, you have, by simple mechanical law, locked the other out. This isn't positive thinking as decoration. This is positive thinking as architecture. You are not trying to feel good. You are trying to control the only real estate you will ever fully own. Think of two people who lose the exact same job on the exact same day, at the exact same company, for the exact same reason: downsizing, nothing personal, purely economic. The first person goes home and lets the news move in uninvited. Within hours, it has taken over every room. It's in the kitchen while she eats dinner. It's in the bedroom while she tries to sleep. Within a month, that unwelcome guest called "I've failed" has convinced her to stop applying, stop networking, stop trying, because why would she invite more rejection into a house that's already crowded with it? The second person goes home too. He feels the sting. He's human, not a robot. But before the thought, "I am worthless," can fully walk through the door, he stops at the threshold and asks one question: is this thought allowed to live here? He decides it isn't. Not because he's in denial, but because he understands that the story he tells himself in the next 72 hours will shape the next 7 years. He starts making calls the very next morning. Same event. Same pain. Two completely different kingdoms, because only one of them had a door. Tonight, before you close your eyes, ask yourself one question: what thought did I let walk into my house today without checking who it was? Just noticing it is the first brick in the wall you're about to build. But here's the thing: knowing the door exists isn't enough. The real question is what you're supposed to guard it with. And that's where Hill's next discovery becomes almost uncomfortable in how simple it is. Lesson 2: The Two Currencies. Every thought is either buying or stealing from you. Most people live as if all thoughts are equal, as if a worry and a plan carry the same weight, as if anxiety and ambition are just two flavors of the same mental substance. They are not. And treating them as if they are is quietly bankrupting people who have no idea they're broke. Nobody ever taught us that thought has a cost. We think of thinking as free: it doesn't cost money, it doesn't show up on a bank statement. But it withdraws from something far more valuable than currency: your energy, your focus, your nervous system, your capacity to act. A mind spent worrying about a meeting that hasn't happened yet is a mind that has already paid for a problem that may never arrive. Hill draws a hard line between two forces he calls positive mental attitude and negative mental attitude, but strip away the era-specific language and what he's really describing is an economy. Every single thought you think is either an investment or an expense. There is no neutral thought. The mind is always spending. This reframes everything. Suddenly, just relax isn't soft advice, it's financial literacy for your inner world. Suddenly choosing to dwell on a slight from a coworker isn't harmless venting, it's you handing over your emotional currency to someone who didn't even ask for it. Consider a young salesman early in his career, sitting in his car after his 9th rejection of the day. His hands are on the wheel, and he has a choice most people never realize they're making. Does he spend the next hour replaying the rejection, or does he spend it preparing for door number 10? He chooses to sit in silence for exactly 60 seconds, allow the sting to pass through him rather than settle into him, and then he does something almost nobody does: he writes down one thing he'll do differently on the next call. That's it. No grand speech. No forced enthusiasm. Just a decision about where his mental currency goes next. 10 years later, that salesman runs the division. Not because he never faced rejection, he faced more of it than almost anyone. But because he refused to let a negative thought overdraw an account that was supposed to be funding his future. For the next 24 hours, catch yourself mid-thought and ask: is this thought an investment in the person I'm becoming, or an expense I can't afford right now? You don't have to eliminate negative thoughts. You just have to stop paying full price for the ones that don't deserve it. But even once you understand this, even once you start guarding the door and tracking the currency, there's a deeper trap waiting. Because some of the most dangerous thoughts don't feel negative at all. They feel safe. And that safety is exactly what makes them so hard to escape. Lesson 3: The Comfortable Prison. Why safety is the most convincing lie your mind tells you. There's a version of self-sabotage that doesn't look like sabotage at all. It looks like caution. It looks like being realistic. It looks like staying in the job that's slowly hollowing you out because at least it's predictable, or not starting the thing you've dreamed about because at least you haven't failed at it yet. The brain isn't wired for greatness. It's wired for survival. And for most of human history, survival meant staying exactly where you were, doing exactly what worked yesterday, and treating anything unfamiliar as a threat. That wiring hasn't updated. So your mind, left unmanaged, will always default to the smallest possible version of your life, not because it's cruel, but because it thinks it's protecting you. The fear of failure is rarely about failure at all, it's about the discomfort of change. Most people don't avoid taking the leap because they're afraid of falling. They avoid it because they're afraid of becoming someone unfamiliar to themselves, someone their old identity wouldn't recognize. Owning your own mind means catching this disguise. It means learning to ask, every time comfort dresses itself up as wisdom, whether it's actually protecting you, or simply protecting the version of you that's easiest to manage. Imagine a woman who has wanted to start her own business for 6 years. Every year, she tells herself the same sentence, next year, when things are more stable. But things are never more stable, because stability was never actually the obstacle. Her mind had simply found a very convincing way to keep her exactly where she already was. Then one ordinary Tuesday, she loses someone close to her, suddenly and without warning. And in the disorienting weeks afterward, something shifts. Not because grief is inspiring, it isn't, but because it strips away the illusion that next year was ever guaranteed. 3 months later, she registers the business. Not because she finally became fearless. Because she finally saw the fear for what it always was, a story, not a fact. Ask yourself the one question that exposes this disguise instantly: am I staying here because it's genuinely right for me, or because it's simply the version of my life I've already memorized? Write the answer down. Don't act on it yet. Just see it clearly. Seeing it is the first act of ownership. Now, here's where most self-help stops. Guard your thoughts, question your comfort, and hope for the best. But Hill wasn't finished. Because knowing what to avoid is only half of mental ownership. The other half is far more active, and far more demanding. Lesson 4: The Architecture of Purpose. A mind without a blueprint will build someone else's house. Even people who've done the inner work, who've cleared out the negativity, who've stopped renting space to fear, often hit an invisible ceiling. They feel calmer. They feel more in control. And yet their life still doesn't move. Something is missing, and it isn't positivity. An empty room, even a clean one, is still just an empty room. You can spend years clearing out negative thoughts and still have nothing constructive standing in their place. Most people stop at not thinking badly and never advance to thinking with direction. A mind without a defined purpose will always default to drifting, and drifting feels productive right up until you look back and realize you've arrived nowhere in particular. This is where Hill's philosophy becomes almost architectural. He insists that definiteness of purpose is not a motivational slogan, it's a mental operating system. A specific, written, emotionally charged goal doesn't just guide your actions during the day. It reorganizes what your subconscious mind searches for while you're not even paying attention, in conversations, in opportunities, in the books you happen to pick up. Without that blueprint, your mind will still build something. It always does. It just won't be the house you actually wanted to live in. 2 young men enter the same industry at the same company, same starting salary, same qualifications. One keeps a single sentence taped inside his desk drawer, a specific description of the exact position he intends to hold in 5 years, and why it matters to him beyond the money. The other has no such sentence. He's simply doing well and seeing where it goes. 5 years pass. The first man is now leading the department, not because he was smarter, but because every decision he made, every course he took, every difficult conversation he initiated, was filtered through a target the other man never defined. The second man is still doing well. He's still seeing where it goes. He just never noticed that, where it goes, was a decision other people were quietly making for him the entire time. Write one sentence, right now, describing exactly what you want your life to look like in 5 years, specific enough that you'd recognize it the moment you arrived. Not a vague feeling. A blueprint. Read it every morning until it stops feeling like a wish and starts feeling like a fact you're simply waiting to catch up to. But even a blueprint isn't enough if the builder loses his nerve halfway through construction. And this is the part of the book most people skip past too quickly, because it's the part that requires the most uncomfortable kind of honesty. Lesson 5: The discipline underneath the dream. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the fire that survives the wind. Almost everyone has felt it, that electric surge of motivation after a good book, a powerful video, a late-night moment of clarity. And almost everyone has watched that same surge evaporate by Thursday. The dream was real. The follow-through wasn't. And so the gap between who someone wants to be and who they actually are keeps quietly widening. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are, by nature, temporary. Building a life on motivation is like trying to heat a house with a match. It produces light for a moment, and then you're back in the dark, wondering why the warmth didn't last. The hidden cause of most unfinished dreams isn't a lack of desire. It's the absence of a structure that doesn't depend on desire to keep functioning. Hill's insight is almost surgical. Self-discipline is the ability to make your mind carry out its own decisions even after the emotion that inspired them has left the room. It is the difference between a person who acts because they feel like it, and a person who acts because they said they would, regardless of how they feel. This is the mechanism that transforms a blueprint from Lesson 4 into an actual building. Purpose gives you direction. Discipline gives you the ability to keep walking in that direction on the mornings when direction feels irrelevant. Think of an athlete in the quiet, unglamorous months before anyone is watching, the early mornings with no crowd, no highlight reel, no applause. The motivation that got her to sign up wore off around week 3. What kept her showing up at 5 in the morning wasn't inspiration. It was a decision she had made once, in a moment of clarity, that she refused to renegotiate every single morning simply because the alarm felt loud and the bed felt warm. By the time competition arrives, she isn't hoping to perform well. She already knows she will, because performance, for her, was decided months earlier, in 100 small, unremarkable mornings nobody else saw. Choose one small commitment today, something achievable, something specific, and complete it today, regardless of whether you feel motivated when the moment arrives. Not because the task itself is significant. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself without needing to feel like it, you prove to your own mind that you are someone whose word can be trusted. That trust is the real foundation everything else gets built on. And this brings us to the discovery Hill considered the most misunderstood of everything in this book, because it isn't about willpower at all. It's about something working quietly beneath the surface, 24 hours a day, whether you're paying attention to it or not. Lesson 6: The Silent Architect. The part of your mind that never stops building. Here is the strange contradiction almost nobody notices. A person can consciously believe in their goal, say the right affirmations, visualize success every morning, and still watch their actual life move in the opposite direction. They did everything the surface-level advice told them to do, and it still didn't take. Something deeper was overriding the effort. Beneath the conscious mind, the part doing the deciding, the planning, the willpower, sits a far larger, far older, far more powerful force, the subconscious mind. And here's the uncomfortable truth about it. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between a thought you deliberately chose and a thought you simply allowed to repeat. It doesn't judge content. It only registers repetition and emotional intensity. Whatever you feed it consistently, it will work, tirelessly and invisibly, to make real, whether that thought serves you or destroys you. This is Hill's most radical claim, and the one that reframes everything that came before it. You are not simply managing your thoughts for comfort. You are giving instructions to a builder who never stops working, 24 hours a day, whether you're watching or not. Every worry repeated enough times becomes a blueprint. Every ambition held with enough emotional conviction becomes one too. The subconscious doesn't care which one it's building, it simply builds whatever it's been shown most often. This is why lessons 1 through 5 all lead here. Guarding the door, spending your mental currency wisely, refusing false comfort, defining a purpose, disciplining your actions, all of it exists to control what message reaches this silent, tireless architect operating beneath your awareness. Consider two people who both, on paper, want the same promotion. One spends her commute rehearsing every way it could go wrong, the question she might fumble, the colleague who might get it instead, the disappointment she's preparing herself for, just in case. The other spends the same 20 minutes rehearsing the exact conversation she intends to have when she asks for it, feeling, as vividly as she can, what it will be like to hear yes. Neither of them is being irrational. Both believe they're simply thinking it through. But only one of them is handing her subconscious a blueprint for confidence, clarity, and the calm competence that actually shows up in interview rooms. The other is handing hers a blueprint for hesitation, and hesitation, translated into a real conversation, sounds exactly like doubt. Guess which one got the role? Before you fall asleep tonight, spend 90 seconds, not fantasizing vaguely, but vividly imagining, one specific outcome you want, as if it has already happened. Feel it, don't just think it. You are not being unrealistic. You are simply making sure the architect working the night shift has the right plans on the table. Every lesson up to this point has been about defense and construction, guarding, investing, questioning, building, disciplining, instructing. But there is one final test Hill insists on, and it's the one that separates people who understand this book from people who actually live it. Lesson 7: Ownership Under Fire. You don't really own your mind until something tries to take it from you. It's relatively easy to feel like you own your mind on a calm Tuesday when nothing is going wrong. The real test, the only test that actually matters, arrives during a crisis. A diagnosis, a betrayal, a financial collapse, or a public failure. That's when most people discover that everything they thought they'd mastered was only ever theoretical. Adversity has a particular power: it removes the luxury of pretending. Under normal conditions, a person can coast on habits, routines, and the general momentum of an ordinary week. But adversity strips all of that away and asks one blunt question: who is actually in charge in here? For most people, the honest answer, revealed only in crisis, is not them. Hill's final and most enduring insight is this: every genuine setback carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater advantage, but only for the mind trained to search for it. This is not blind optimism. It is not pretending pain doesn't exist. It is the disciplined refusal to let a difficult circumstance dictate the internal state of the person experiencing it. The event happens to you. The meaning of the event is decided entirely by you. This is the final proof of ownership. Anyone can manage a calm mind. Only the person who has genuinely done the work can manage a mind under siege, and come out of it with something built, rather than something broken. Think of one difficulty you're currently facing, even a small one. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, out loud if you have to, "What is this trying to teach me that comfort never could?" You don't need the full answer today. You just need to prove, to yourself, that you're the one asking the questions, not the circumstance. Let's conclude it. Here is everything this journey has actually been about. You started at an open door, letting anyone and anything wander into your thinking uninvited. You learned that every thought spends something: energy, focus, potential, and that most people are unknowingly bankrupt. You saw comfort for what it often really is: fear, wearing a very convincing disguise. You learned that a mind without a defined purpose will drift, no matter how positive it becomes. You discovered that motivation was never meant to last, that discipline was always the real engine underneath it. You met the silent, tireless architect working beneath your awareness, building exactly what you feed it, whether you meant to feed it that or not. And finally, you saw what real ownership looks like, not in comfortable conditions, but in the middle of the fire. That is the transformation Napoleon Hill was actually offering. Not a better mood. Not a temporary boost. A fundamental shift in who holds the keys to the only property you will occupy for the rest of your life. Here is your challenge, and I want you to actually do this, not just nod along and close the tab. Pick one, just one, of the 7 lessons you just heard. Not all 7. 1. And apply its action today, before you sleep tonight. Guard the door. Track the currency. Question the comfort. Write the blueprint. Keep one small promise. Feed the architect on purpose. Ask what the difficulty is trying to teach you. Choose one, and do it in the next few hours. Because here is the idea I want you to carry with you long after this video ends, long after you've forgotten which lesson was which, you will never be able to fully control what happens to you. Nobody can. But the moment you truly understand that you can always control what happens in you, that single realization is the difference between a person who survives their life, and a person who owns it. The door to your mind is open right now. The only question that actually matters is, who's going to walk through it next, the world, or you? If this changed the way you see your own mind, don't let it end here. Subscribe, so the next transformation finds you when you need it most. And if there's one person in your life who's currently letting the world run their head instead of running it themselves, send them this video. It might be the one thing that finally hands them back the keys.